Welcome to AETCM. Today we will be discussing a pediatric young child presenting with unilateral upper limb and lower limb weakness. Shall we start, sir?
Yes.
Sir, a 10-year-old boy was brought to ER with my short history from the EMT that child is having a severe headache following with acute onset of right upper limb, lower limb weakness since today morning. Child present to our ER by evening time, sir. And in my initial before 10-second assessment, immediately went my pediatric assessment triangle, sir. In the appearance wise, child was little irritable but consolable, and look and gaze and speech was appearing to be normal, but speech smiled dysarthria was noted at that time, sir. Otherwise, the tone was normal on the right side, but left side the mild hypotonia was noted on both upper limb and lower limb, sir. Then work of breathing was normal with the normal sounds and no chest retraction or no nasal flaring, sir. Circulation wise, no pallor, no mottling or no cyanosis were detected. CRT was less than 2 seconds at that time, sir. So this was my initial PAT triangle.
So PAT triangle wise, the child looks stable.
Stable, just irritable with the upper limb and lower limb weaknesses there.
So no intervention is needed at this point of time.
Okay. So then I went to my primary survey. In primary survey, airway is appearing patent with a normal cervical spine movement and no spine tenderness, nothing was there, sir. No oral secretion. Respiratory rise is only 19 breaths per minute with the saturation maintained 99% in room air, sir. BP circulation, CRT already less than 2 seconds. BP it was around systolic BP of around 94, and diastolic BP was around 60 millimeters of mercury, sir.
Okay. So what will be the 50th percentile for this age?
So usually we calculate by 70 plus age into 2, sir. 2, sir.
So how much should be?
It will be around 90, sir. It's
a 10-year-old child, 90. Okay, so it is okay for that age.
Yes, sir.
So that is the 50th percentile. That is the thing that you need to remember. Okay.
And heart rate was around 89 per minute, sir. For up to his age, 900 will be normal, sir. And then I went to the disability of her.
Now, what are the inferences you are making from that writers in a patient who was presented with weakness?
Sir, usually we are presenting with an acute weakness. Usually in case of a CVA, we expect a raised ICT, raised heart BP. But in case of a severe raised ICT, we can Cushing's reflex can also be accepted. There we can set a bradycardia with a raised ICT with altered respiratory pattern, sir. For this point, but child appears to be within everything appears to be within the normal limits.
One thing, initially you told that the weakness presented started in the morning.
Morning,
sir. The patient had come to us in the evening.
Actually, child has been taken to local hospital and they are coming from a far away hospital, sir.
Has there been any progression since then? Or?
Actually, child morning the patient child was having severe headache, sir, and from the referring hospital they have given some analgesics, I think some ibugesic plus, and with subsiding of pain, child has started actually mild improvement from 0 to 1 from the history that's there. Otherwise, no significant improvement in powers.
Okay, we'll come back.
No worsening also.
Disability.
GCS was 15 by 15, but pupils were also 2.5 mm bilaterally reactive. GRBs also I checked at that time, it was around 108 milligrams per deciliter, sir. Okay. And then I went to the exposure. Peripheries were warm, and child is already covered with a blank sheet, sir. So I reassessment of primary survey, airway, breathing, circulation, disability, in exposure, everything appears to be normal. So I went to the secondary survey, sir.
So initial primary survey, there is no intervention needed at that point of time. So there is no life-threatening emergencies at that point of time. So we have proceeded to the reassessment and we have gone into the secondary survey. Okay.
In being, since it's a unilateral weakness, I calculated the NIHSS score also at that time. It was coming around to be 8, sir. Since it's a pediatric age group, I didn't immediately went for a neuroimaging. I proceeded with the secondary surveys. In secondary survey, no history of any allergies in the past. Medication history, child is not on any regular medication. Past history, there is a history of similar episode in 2017, but that time the child was having only headaches, no upper limb or lower limb weakness. Therefore, at that time he was evaluated and he was found to have a right-sided cerebral AV malformation, for which but he was not treated or done any surgical procedures or repair was not done, sir. There is a history of similar episode in 2017. Then even last meal was yesterday night, sir. Even we led to the arrival to our hospital is child was apparently normal till yesterday night. Child went into sleep. When he today morning he woke up with severe headache, sir. Child was crying, and the mother noticed that child was not using his right upper limb, not moving the right upper limb and lower limb. And also the mother noticed that there is slight deviation of angle of mouth to the right side, and the child was slurring. Mild slurring was also noted.
Okay.
Immediately they took the patient to a nearby hospital, and there they since
Any precipitating event as such?
Usually
What will be the classical history for an AV malformation if the child has AV malformation?
seizures can be there, sir. Seizure.
Okay. Any precipitating event, if at all it is an aneurysm, it need to rupture, or if it is an AV malformation, that will be the usually.
But child, from this child reading.
Any straining, that is the most important thing. Anything that can increase the ICP in this child, maybe we don't know exactly what happened. Maybe we ask it again. Maybe there can be a violent cough that would have precipitated. But from the history, what you are saying, the child was absolutely normal in the night, and he slept well, and early morning wake up with an weakness. So we don't know exactly what happened. Usually there can be some event that would have precipitated this thing, some straining, some violent cough. That is a classical history you might get, especially in subarachnoid hemorrhages.
So that's and that hospital, since it's they already know the case of an old history of AV malformation, then we are suspecting bleed. They referred the patient to our hospital, actually to a tertiary hospital where a neuroimaging is possible, but bystanders they immediately took to Amrita. That's why they could delay it to till the child appeared here. That was the event, sir. Then a head to foot examination. Head to foot examination, the head appears normal size and appearance. Cervical spine appears normal, no pupillary asymmetry, and C-spine and oral cavity, everything appears within normal limits, sir. And but deviation of angle of mouth to the left side was to the right side was noted, and but no tongue fall, and nothing was there, sir. And in the head also, while examining the head and neck also, I examined the cranial nerves also at that time. Olfaction or cranial nerves were within normal limits, sir. I mean olfactory, all the
Quickly, what all cranial nerves you can examine in an emergency room?
Sir,
What are the things? Olfaction, you leave it alone.
Leave it. Most important thing is the 9 and 10, sir. So to make sure that the child doesn't aspirate, sir, for an emergency physician. So we can usually see the gag reflex, or we can ask the child, or sound can be seen whether any deviation or uvular deviation, anything is there or not. And another thing is we can ask for the movement of the eyes. So the 3, 4 and 6, if all the movements of the everything is normal, then 3, 4, 6 pattern. Then trigeminal nerve, we can ask for touch sensation of the face. Facial nerves, we can ask for the powers of clenching of teeth, any facial muscles of facial expression, everything is there or not. 9 and 10, 8, we can 7 and 8 with the auditory, any issues are there or not, we can ask. 11 with the shrugging of shoulders, sir. 12, power of tongue. Basically, sir.
So there is a quick examination that you can bedside examination. Routine examination might take some time, but as you said, the airway is a priority for us.
Emergency.
So definitely we have to look into this. Okay, fine.
Child, it was within normal. So I went to the chest examination. Chest air entry is bilaterally equal, and the respiratory rate and saturations were within normal limits, sir. And cardiovascular system also S1, S2 was
Neurological findings.
Then in a detailed neurological examination, cranial nerve already mentioned. Motor, right upper limb, lower limb appears to be 5 power. Left upper limb and lower limb only 1/5 power is there. And sensory, bilateral upper limb and lower limb patterns, then reflexes, left upper limb and lower limb reflexes were absent. Deep tendon reflexes were not able to exaggerate, but plantar, it was extensor at that time on the left side. Right side, it was flexor only, sir. Okay. And deep tendon reflexes and superficial reflexes were.
So left side you have an UMN type of weakness in the left side.
Sir.
Okay.
So that was the near exam. Otherwise, again, GIT and other systems were within normal limits. So I came to the provisional diagnosis that.
What was done to the pain for the child? Headache we have mentioned.
Since child was given.
What was the pain score? You didn't mention the pain score.
Pain score was actually when child came to our hospital, it was hardly around 2 to 3/10, sir. The outside hospital they have given the Ibuprofen, it's Brufen plus paracetamol. Afterwards, child was comparatively okay. But in the ER itself, while before shift to child was progressively having an increased headache. At that time, we intervened. The initial pain was around hardly 2 to 3, but it's gradually over next 1.5 to 2 hours, it increased it around 6, sir. So at that time, actually, we again repeated a dose of paracetamol. Syrup was only given, sir. 15 to 20 mg per kg syrup was given.
Syrup, what will happen to this child? syrup, again you are giving raised, you're suspecting a raised ICP.
Yes, sir. Vomiting is a possibility,
There's
sir.
a high chance of vomiting. Anyway, this child you definitely need a parenteral IV access you are going to put. You're suspecting and probably in a bleed. That's the first thing that you need to have.
Other things, sir, we can give IV paracetamol.
What else? You can give a suppository. 10-year-old, yes.
Suppository PCM.
Suppository can be given. But want to give a high dose. Better you can give IV itself. That will be better for this child.
Yes.
Anything other than paracetamol you can
Think of.
Sir, other analgesics like more fentanyl can be given, sir. NSAIDs can be given, sir.
any problem with opioids in this group? Specific case?
Opioid, another one is we have to make sure there is no fall in GCS and seizures should be considered, sir. So,
So what was done next?
Then I came to the provisional diagnosis. The child is having a past history of AV malfunction. We should highly possibility of recurrence of bleed and led to a acute hemiplegia. So acute left-sided hemiplegia. So immediately I reassessed the primary survey. Child was patent. So I proceeded. I explained the condition to the bystander. We planned for an emergency CT for this child, sir. And the child was shifted to the CT room. And the CT report we came as the patient is having a right-sided temporoparietal area. Large bleed is there, around 5 cross 5 centimeter bleed is there.
Let me ask this question. You are planning for a CT.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
So right now the child is stable. So how will you plan your shifting to your CT room? Because CT room is again, maybe it can be, as in our case we have a nearby CT facility, but inside the emergency room itself. But when the patient is going somewhere outside, for example, you need to have another 10-15 minutes. For this child, what all things you will keep in your mind and how will you plan the shifting? That is, many of the time adverse effects can happen inside the CT room.
First, I will explain what are the adverse effects we expect from this kind of child. Sir.
This child, be specific. Yeah.
So this child can develop seizures at any time, sir. So possibility, so any time a seizure drugs to subside seizures like benzodiazepam we should be carrying, sir. And along with any time the child can aspirate. So antiemetics, we can prophylactically early itself we can give an antiemetic, sir. Antiemetics can be done. And third thing is that any time child can further fall in GCS case expected, sir. So any time and fall in GCS and airway compromise, we should be ready to intubate, sir. For this child, we should have at least a McIntosh 3 or Miller's straight blade 3 or McIntosh 2 size 2 laryngoscope should be there. And ET2 age by 4+4 is the formula. So we should have a cuffed and uncuffed ET2 along with that, along with the suction aid and all the drugs for rapid sequence intubation should be kept ready, sir. So earlier itself, we should be calculating with the bag and mask ventilation. I mean, bag and
for
mask.
A 10-year-old child, the first thing is that whenever the child is going inside the emergency room, you need to calculate the drug formula and size has to be calculated. If you have a Brussels tape, you can use that. Or otherwise, it is always an ideal thing to calculate before itself. Rather than the child is going to have an event, before that itself you can calculate all those things. The most important thing that is size of the tube, size of the blade, fluid bolus if you want to give, how much fluid bolus you want to give. If you are planning for an induction agent, what is the dose of induction agent for this child? That's the most important thing. And again, the dose of adrenaline. So these things you can calculate and you can keep it aside in your crash cart ready if such a child is coming. So that is the additional thing. We all know that we need to give this drug. Rather than an event to happen, we can keep all those things ready and you can plan for shifting. So at the time of shifting, ideally, how long? Usually 20 minutes the CT will be done and the child will be back. The most important thing that you said, aspiration, vomiting is the most important. Rather than before seizure itself, the child can vomit. So the better that you keep this child NPO. Preferably you can give an antiemetic and before itself, rather than waiting for an event to develop, you can give an antiemetic and you can shift to the CT. Oxygen delivery devices, anything else you need to carry?
We should have, of course, we should carry the oxygen delivery device, sir. But our target is that we have to maintain a saturation more than 94. If the child desaturates only, we have to supplement the oxygen, sir. But while we are proceeding with the rapid sequence intubation, for pre-oxygenation, we will require 100% oxygen delivery.
So, for example, the event is happening inside the lift.
Yes, sir.
So, what is the advice that you are going to give the EMT? How much oxygen cylinder he should be carrying? What should be the capacity of the oxygen cylinder? Minimum capacity.
Minimum capacity.
See, this is the thing that whenever you are planning for a transportation, you need to understand that what oxygen delivery device you have in the department. And what is the minimum capacity, how much long it can go ahead. Like for example, if you have an usually the liter cells 1000 liters, you will have a small portable one. Maybe it will be a 200 liter oxygen. If you're going to give an 15 liters per minute, hardly it will stay for 2 to 3 minutes. So you need to calculate prior to the transport itself if such an adverse event is going to happen while transportation. If you're going to have like 10 to 15 minutes, you need to have an adequate oxygen supply, because inside the lift an event can happen. When you are having a fixed oxygen delivery device somewhere in the wall, you can connect, but in this situation you need to carry with the patient. So that is the thing. For how much, for example, you are going to give 2 liters of oxygen per minute. So how much oxygen, you have to check the valve, how much oxygen is inside that cylinder, and if it is empty cylinder, you need to refill it and take it, because majority of the time an adverse event can happen while shifting. So that is the thing that we have to anticipate. We have done everything in the emergency room, but when the patient goes to the CT room or comes back from the CT room, an event develops, and at that time you will not have enough hands and all the equipments you won't have. So as I said, you have to calculate and keep it ready, especially regarding oxygen delivery devices. This patient is not on a ventilator, but preferably he can desaturate, he can have a seizure. You need to give an high flow oxygen at that point of time. That time you need to carry all those things. So that planning has to be done. Adult patient, it is pretty easy because of the formulas, everything is easy. We can easily carry whatever oxygen is required, everything. But in a child, again, the drug dilutions, because the staff nurse will not be well versed to give for a child. So everything you need to document and keep it ready as a separate kit. That will be an ideal thing. Suresh, anything to add on? Okay, so this child was shifted to the CT, and
CT was showing a large 5 cross 5 centimeter right occipital area bleed, sir, with midline shift, sir.
Okay, with midline shift. Okay.
So a child was immediately brought back here, and since it's IC bleed, we placed the child in a head and elevation of around 30 degree, and we started him on anti-edema measures, sir. Anti-edema measures we started on 3% saline, sir. Usually we used to give 5 ml per kg bolus followed by 0.1 ml per kg of infusion we start, sir. And we kept mannitol as a backup only in case of.
What will be the target sodium?
We should be keeping above 140, sir. 145 to 150.
140, 145 should be ideal. 145 will be ideal.
That should be the target sodium, sir, and we will be monitoring sodium every Q6 hourly, and mannitol as a backup in case of any Cushing's reflex or any further fall in GCS, sir. And the child was and all the avoiding of all the necklines and avoiding all kind of any excessive pressures, any antiemetics, proper antiemetics and analgesics were given. Sir, PCM was IV PCM was continued for this child. And
fluid management, how will you plan the fluid management for this child?
Sir, unless there is
because the child being, you are going to keep the child as nil per hourly.
Yes, sir.
You have to plan nutrition as well as you have to think of fluid management also. So how will you plan this fluid?
Fluid management, we usually follow the Holiday formula. For this patient, the child was around 36 kg. So up to first 10 kg, we will be calculating 4 ml per kg. That is around 40 ml. Next it will be around 20, 60. Then for every 10 kg, 1 kg, we will be increasing 1 ml per kg. So it will be around 60, 70. 76 ml per.
That is the maintenance fluid that you have to give. That is the normal hydration fluid that you need to give. If there is any loss of fluid, you need to replace it. If the patient is going to vomit, you need to replace it. Also, you need to calculate the 3% saline that you are going to give. So altogether, that should be the fluid that you are going to give this child. Why it is important in this child?
Because overhydration itself will there cause cerebral edema, further increase the cerebral edema, and further fall in GCS, and it may further worsen the condition.
Okay.
And further things.
You want to give anti-seizure medication for this child?
So unless there is a witnessed seizure or EEG documented seizure, we don't recommend giving an anti-epileptic for the child, sir. Even in case the child throws up a seizure, we can terminate the seizures by giving benzodiazepine and load the child with phenytoin, sir, or phosphonatoin, 20 mg per kg, or phosphonatoin means 20 mg per kg of equivalent to phenytoin. Levetiracetam is also approved one. It also again 20 mg per kg. Levetiracetam can also be loaded.
So another added thing, you can use levetiracetam in pediatric age group also. Many of them have a doubt whether we can use levetiracetam in pediatric age group. We can use levetiracetam in pediatric age group also. Okay, so suppose this child suddenly developed decreased sensorium in front of you. What will be your approach?
If there is a fatal sensorium in GCS, then immediately we will have to start with the primary survey, sir. Again, airway. If the airway is compromised, then we will have to proceed with the rapid sequence intubation, sir. And everything I already mentioned.
Suppose you feel airway, there is no airway compromise. For example, 15 GCS, now it has come to 12.
Then if the airway is still patent, then we can go to the breathing part, sir. Breathing part, if this child is desaturating, any saturation, and if the air enter is bilaterally equal, then we can go ahead with the circulation, sir. In circulation, we have to see whether there is a fall in BP and anything, any severe arrhythmias or anything the child has precipitated, sir. If it is also normal, then we have to go to the disability part. Then we have to make sure that we have to reassess the GRBS for sure, and also GCS fall we have already documented. GRBS has to be
normal
checked,
GRBS.
And then if again normal GRBS, then we have to highly suspect a possibility of worsening of the IC bleed, sir. Immediately mannitol can be given, because since it is already known case of IC bleed, a mannitol will be.
What will be the dose?
Mannitol initial dose will be have to give 1 grams per kilogram, sir. Usually we get 20% mannitol 100 ml. It is 20 gram. So 1 gram per kilogram mannitol bolus can be given
to this child. Okay.
To reduce the cerebral edema, sir.
Then definitely surgical management.
Decompression should be done, sir. Craniotomy will be indicated for this child. We are documented as an actually this later child was taken up for CT angio and found to have it is a AV malformation, sir. So AV malformation repair, child will definitely require a craniotomy, and repair of the AV malformation surgery is required, sir. This child was posted within next 12 hours for repair, sir, and child is currently post-op and
doing well,
sir.
Suppose you don't have a history of AV malformation.
Yes, sir.
Okay, you don't have AV malformation history at all, and so what will be the plan here?
If the AV malformation, we don't know, we are not suspecting a bleed, a child with acute CV, then the investigation of choice will be definitely an MRI, sir. Then MRI will be done for the child, and in MRI we have to rule out whether.
What are the differentials that you need to think before MRI? What are the differentials? You can just tell the differentials.
Differential diagnosis.
A hemiplegia child coming to the emergency room, sudden onset
weakness. One is an acute CV itself.
How frequent you will encounter this?
Actually, pediatric CV is very less, sir. Then we other suspect things we have to suspect is space occupying lesions.
What is the most common reason for an emergency room visit for a child?
Post-ictal state we should be highlighting. TOTS paralysis is a temporary paralysis which is seen post-ictally, and TOTS paralysis should be ruled out. Hypoglycemia should be ruled out. Hypoxia should be ruled out, and trauma with any cervical spine injury should be ruled out, sir.
Again, there may not be anything in the X-ray or in the CT. Then you have to go ahead with an MRI. You have to look for sometimes you can get Shivora. That is the thing.
Then intracranial any space occupying lesions, anything is there, and
usually what will be from the history you said sudden onset of headache and weakness, looks like a vascular abnormality, unlikely to be an ischemic event, because this age group is not very common to develop any of the ischemic events. If at all they are developing, what will be the type of ischemic events they will have?
Ischemia will probably it will be an vascular pathology, sir, like arteriopathies, like conditions like Mayo disease. I will just mention that entire thing can be classified into arteriopathy, and either it can be an arteriopathy or any cortical venous thrombosis, or it can be an hemorrhagic stroke, sir. So this entire arterio itself, most common childhood is in arteriopathy. It has a usually poor outcome, and most common it is due to focal transient cerebral arteriopathies with an acute onset of irregular weakness, or it can be due to vasculitis or due to infectious causes like bacterial meningitis or post-varicella angiopathies.
Demyelination?
Demyelination, in that itself most common is ADEM, acute disseminated encephalomyelitis. It is the most common that can present with the unilateral weakness, and then other conditions like Mayo disease, arterial dissection, any fibromuscular dysplasia, posterior radiation vasculopathy.
These are the differential that you need to keep in your mind. Unless you are, this is a straightforward patient because he had a bleed, you have a diagnosis, it's an hemorrhagic stroke. But whenever you don't have we have a normal CT, then is a problem. Then you have to evaluate with an MRI, look for all those things, maybe MRI brain with contrast, maybe a CSF study. If you are suspecting in terms of demyelination, all those things needed to be done.
In any congenital heart disease, then a possibility of cardioembolic stroke, and any hematological causes, especially sickle cell anemia, 200% more increased chance of developing an acute CV. Thrombotic CV. Then inborn errors of some MELAS, there are other possibilities.
From clinical point of view, anything else you could have done before waiting for the CT? Any examination you could have?
We can look for the fundus, sir. Fundus, and we can see papilledema is there, or raised ICT can be ruled out. Then ultrasound orbit optic nerve can also be done, sir.
One more thing, most of the things you later told will fall into the broad category of stroke mimics.
Yeah, stroke mimics, hypoglycemia, TOTS paralysis, everything comes under stroke mimics.
And from an emergency point of view, this patient has sufficient role if he decompensates suddenly. Along with airway protection, is there any other bedside procedure you could think of? If there is hydrocephalus, one life-saving procedure will be an emergency EVD.
EVD.
Okay, and decompression will be a hemicraniectomy most likely. Decompressive craniectomy. And is there any non-surgical interventional kind of things which can be offered for AVMs?
Coiling is there, intravascular clipping for aneurysm. Coiling is there.
Yeah.
Coiling and
Intravascular
Coiling.
procedures
access
can be done. Okay, including intravascular repairs can be done.
Already
Already ruptured.
ruptured. It's ruptured. So definitely you have to treat the bleed now, then the aneurysm. That will be the this thing. Okay, fine. Thank you.